Howdy everyone, my name is Jay, and I'm going to be playing another 3 poorly reviewed Steam games. If any of these games seem interesting, I'll put the link to them in the description below. So the first game is called Infestation Survivor Stories 2020, which is quite the name, might I add. This is basically an MMO zombie survival game, and the pictures didn't look entirely bad. I read a bit more and saw that it was also an open world survival game where you can meet up with friends, explore, scavenge, kill, and of course survive. I then scrolled down to the reviews, and I think at one time you had to pay $1 in order to play the game because there were a small amount of people saying that, but a majority of the reviews said it was just a dead game and that there was really nobody playing. Many also said that when the game was first launched, it was a lot better than how it is now, and that the state that it's in now was completely filled with cheaters and a lot of exploitation. After reading the reviews, I thought maybe it's gotten better, so I decided to try it. When I first booted up the game, I had to make an account, which was pretty normal. Then I was taken to a welcome screen. The screen just had a bunch of information about how to play the game and how the menu was set up. The first screen was about the home menu and what certain things in the home menu meant. The second screen talked very briefly of the season pass, but mainly focused on how to level up and earn rewards. The third screen showed how to add friends and accept or decline friends. And the final screen talked about skins and how you were able to add them to your loadout. This kind of system is not a bad thing on its own. It's important to teach people how to use the menu and how to navigate it, especially if there are a lot of tabs that do different things. But the way it was done was a bit overwhelming, and there was so much information on the screen, but at the same time, the instructions were pretty much the bare minimum. After dealing with the welcome screen, I was put into the main menu where I could choose which game mode I wanted to play. There were 4 modes to pick from: arcade, survival, battle royale, and competitive. I decided to do survival just to get my bearings on the game, and because that's one of my favorites. I was then able to choose from 2 characters, an ex-military male or a female hunter, and the rest had to be unlocked. There wasn't much you could change with the characters. You could change the hair color, shirt, and pants. So I gave my hunter purple hair, a Christmas shirt, and Christmas pants. I wanted to be as obvious as possible in hopes the zombies could see me. So I created my character and received 2 tubes of glue as a daily reward before entering into the tutorial. Now I'm going to give you a fair warning if you ever decide to play the game or check it out. This game takes a lot out of your CPU and had my computer running really hot in just the tutorial alone. So if you have a low-end computer, I cannot recommend this game. During the entire tutorial, my fans were running on max, and I was nervous that my PC would either explode or fly away from me. So keep that in mind while I show you the tutorial. I loaded into the game pretty quickly, and it began teaching me the basics of the game. It told me to go to the post office and get a knife and 2 bandages. Super easy shit. The controls are not anything crazy, and as I was making my way to the abandoned house to continue the tutorial, I crouched for the first time, and I swear to God I thought my character's neck had broke. I don't know why, but when you crouch, your neck is tilted so far away from your body, and it's almost as if it's trying to get away. So with my broken neck, I continued to the abandoned house and grabbed the body and head armor. As soon as I picked up the body armor, I was thrown into a new area and finally got to see a zombie. The zombie looked decent. Again, it wasn't anything crazy. Now, before I started the tutorial, I was informed on the screen that the survival mode can be extremely overwhelming, and I can completely understand why. In order to kill zombies in this game, you have to hit a headshot, either with your knife or gun. I found this kind of cool because I don't often see this mechanic in games. I really only see this done in TV shows, but I also understand how this can overwhelm someone. After stabbing my first zombie to death, I was then able to use the guns. The pistol and assault rifle were fine. but the sniper felt like it moved a lot more than other games, especially when you aim down sight. But if anything, it just means you have to get good at the game in order to use the rifle. After the quick gun tutorial, I was then thrown in an arena with zombies and had to fend for myself. This part wasn't really difficult. As long as you aim at head level, all of the normal zombies are about the same height, and just spraying upwards when they're a few feet away works pretty well. I was then shown that there were stronger zombies in the game. The first was the super zombie, which is just a very buff zombie. The toxic zombie was just a super zombie but with green hands. The alien super zombie was a super zombie except it's black. And there's a slicer zombie that looks pretty cool. He kind of looks like Jack Henry Waternoose from Monsters Incorporated. Really cool design. I then was given a PKM and had to kill my first super zombie, which took way too long. Once he was down, I then learned about safe zones, which are basically just continental hotels from John Wick. Honestly, this game wasn't bad. I liked that the zombies were not copied and pasted, other than the mutated zombies, and I liked that there were different game modes. I also really liked the idea of the zombies requiring a headshot in order to kill them. A few things I wasn't entirely crazy about were the graphics and how unorganized the welcome screen was. I also wish the game was optimized a little bit better so that more people could play without completely destroying their CPUs. The final thing I want to say is that many people have had issues with cheaters in this game. It might have been fixed since then, but I can't promise you that it has. The next game I'll be playing is called Silence in the Cabin. It says we must survive a dark linear story and unlock areas within the world. This is also a horror game and is inspired by Resident Evil, PT, and Silent Hill. Most of the reviews were upset about there not being a game menu and not being able to change the settings. Others just said that it was a bad game and not worth downloading, so I just went ahead and downloaded it. When I first entered the game, I took note of how beautiful the game was. The graphics were stunning and did remind me a bit of Resident Evil, especially with the snow on the ground. I could also understand what people meant with needing settings changed, because the sensitivity was a bit too high for me. I picked up the pistol and shot a target a few times before going into the first episode. There is a story in this game, and the dialogue is actually voiced over.
In this horror game, you play as Gabe Parker, a regular mountain man and hunting expert. June 13, 2000. Gabe prepares to meet his brothers for a winter camping trip in the Alaskan mountains. After meeting up, they take the long drive and then pick a spot for camp. Gabe notes the bizarre feeling there in that place, but brushes it off for some shut-eye. Unbeknownst to him, this would be the greatest mistake of his life. June 14, 2000. Gabe wakes on a trail in the woods he does not recognize. Amongst the confusion, he decides to investigate the property further.
After hearing the story, you, as in Gabe, wake up on the trail and are able to walk around for a bit. I picked up the knife from some boxes and began exploring to see where I needed to go. The walking was pretty slow, but it felt right for this type of game. After wandering around for a bit, I stumbled upon a cabin with a truck and tried to go in, but it wasn't unlocked yet. I also tried going around the cabin, but an invisible wall stopped me. I left the cabin and explored some more until I found a shed with a key to the barn. I was able to find the barn and it allowed me in. When I got in the barn, I realized that my knife was gone, but I was able to pick up a new one. I used my knife to break some boards and began walking through the barn. As I was walking through the hall, I freaked out just a little bit from the cheap jump scare and stood still. After taking my frustrations out on a wall, I continued and came to a room with a pistol. I picked up the pistol, but I wasn't sure how to switch to it. I went through the halls a little bit more, and the only scares were the lights really going out. Eventually, I stumbled upon the first enemy, but died since I couldn't figure out how to switch to my gun. I eventually got back to where I was and figured out how to switch weapons. Then I killed the creature, got a key to the cabin, and left. When I got outside, it was obvious that the day was getting darker, and now enemies were spawning in the woods. I'm going to fast forward going through the cabin, mainly because it feels kind of the same as going through the barn. I'm going through hallways and rooms, and the main thing I think is noteworthy is that I got a shotgun. I did travel underground for a bit, but again, nothing different really happened. When I was out of the cabin, it was completely dark outside, and I was given a machine gun. There are also a ton of enemies in the woods, but if you take it slow, they can easily be spotted and you can kill them really quickly with no problems. I eventually got to the bunker, and again, it was a bunch of different hallways with wires, and eventually I did get to see 2 new enemy types in the halls. The first was a slightly larger version of the original creature, and the second was a behemoth of the others. Eventually, I came to a large room and immediately knew there was going to be a boss. And what do you know? There was. The boss looked pretty cool, and the design was really interesting. However, the fight itself was a bit underwhelming. The boss stays in the middle of the room and spawns enemies in. If you just walk around and shoot the boss, you can beat it pretty quickly, and the enemies die once the boss dies. I'm not gonna lie, I really liked this game, even though I do not enjoy playing horror games. The game looks beautiful, and the atmosphere to me is on point. I definitely get Resident Evil and Silent Hill vibes, and the feel is there throughout the entire game. It also kept my attention the whole time, even during the more repetitive and boring parts. The final thing I liked was the monster designs. I wouldn't necessarily say they were scary, but the look of them for me was both beautiful and unsettling. The main issue I had with this game was the story and how it was implemented. You only get the dialogue at the beginning and the end of the game, but there wasn't any lore about the creatures or the area. I didn't see notes or anything throughout playing, and there's no other dialogue while you're going through it. This game also comes in chapters, but at the moment there's just the one chapter. Maybe in the future they will add more content and hopefully add more of a story.
June 15, 2000. Gabe wandered until he found his camp and brothers. June 20, 2000. He later brought them back to investigate the property, yet there was nothing there, all except that cabin on the hill, but this time it was empty and completely silent.
The final game I found, and I hope I'm not butchering the name, is called Tuwas vs MUDA. It's explained to be an economic simulator game, and the goal is to make profit from shipments. When learning more about the game, I found out that MUDA is a Japanese term that means an activity that contains resources but produces no value. I also found out that Tuwas is a German word meaning do something. Honestly, I thought this was a little bit interesting. A lot of the reviews had a thumbs up, but if you actually read them, you would realize that most of them were either sarcasm or jokes. The only thumbs down reviews said it had a lot of bugs and how bad the translations are. I like simulator games, so I decided to go ahead and play it. When I entered the game, I met Ludwig, who we bought the company from, and he gave me some information on how to keep profits. While reading, I could definitely tell that English was not the developer's main language, but that doesn't automatically make a game bad. After talking to Ludwig, I was given a tour of the warehouse and the office. A lot of the tutorial was pretty straightforward, but there's definitely areas where the translation is completely off. The most confusing part were the computers in the office. One monitor was completely in German. The monitor with the shipment details wasn't really explained well, and the final monitor explained and showed your profits over time. I won't lie, I don't have much footage of this game. Most of it was me figuring out how to make money. I'm not going to say the game is bad. I think the main reason for my confusion was misunderstanding and the translation. If you speak German and play this game, I would love to hear your opinion on it. With everything I know, there are a few things I like about this game. The first is the music. It fits well and it isn't too much in your face. I also think the characters are absolutely adorable. This one is a pretty small detail, but while in the office, you can actually look out of the window and see production, and I think that is a really cool feature. The final thing is that I absolutely love the concept of this game. It feels like you work for Amazon without having to actually work for Amazon, and it almost also doesn't feel like work. It's pretty interesting. I did have a list of things that I didn't like, but again, I think most of it is just translation. This game also takes a lot out of your CPU, so just be careful if you decide to play it. Those were 3 free poorly rated games, and if you liked any of them, I'll leave the link to their pages in the description below. My favorite would have to be Silence in the Cabin, and following that would have to be Infestation. Tuwas vs MUDA was my least favorite, but I didn't play enough to fully say that that will be my final answer. If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe if you want, and I'll see you in the next one.